Hi everyone, how's everyone doing today? So, let's have another talk about history again. It's been a while since I've talked about this, and I've been watching some materials and things, so it gave me the idea to have this conversation. So, like I was talking about on my prior video, we live in an age of deceptions, lies, illusions. You could say the same things apply when it comes down to our history, human history, the history of the human race. And I made a video about this a while back, talking about our history and stuff. So this is gonna be about the same subject, but I'm gonna talk about some other things. So what happens is it's been proven, throughout our own history that especially when it comes down to academia and the things that we learn when we go to school, college, university, whatever you name it, the materials that we receive and consume from mostly almost everyone, there's this whole narrative that exists, and anyone that tries to go, you know, against that narrative in some way, maybe have a different opinion, maybe start researching some things deeper, then it's like almost immediately ostracized and there's backlash, and in some cases and situations they will literally, like, their careers may be destroyed. It has happened before. It happens all the time. We just don't happen to know about these things. But there's plenty of people that have been in these fields out there throughout the last 100 years, decades, whatever, that they know that it's not quite as we are told. In a lot of cases it's very much different than what we are told. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about how long we have been around this planet as a race, in all kinds of like anomalies and archaeological finds that have been discovered within the past couple 100 years or so, that prove that what we're being told is not really true. So this side of our history is basically, you know, there's a lot of our history that is omitted from us. It's omission by either deception, omission by suppression, omission by misguidance. And there is also the case of it's I wouldn't even call it omission, but there are straight up lies. There have been cases that have been found of things have been completely fabricated. And don't ask me why these things are done. Okay, that's not the point of the video. The point of the video is to make people aware that these things do exist, and they've been prominent throughout our history. as to how we see our own history, how we accept certain theories, because a lot of the stuff is very theoretical in nature. And I'm sorry, but science should never be theoretical. Science should be the type of thing that is fact based upon real scientific analysis and methodologies. That's what real science is. So why do we accept these things as they are given to us? That is something I can't answer you. What I can answer is it's very easy for people to receive information and accept it without ever questioning it. No questions asked. I don't know why we as a race have this tendency to behave this way, especially now in this age of digital information, right? Where everything is available on the cloud for the most part. And then people forget that before this whole internet thing existed, there have been many, many, many books written about all kinds of things that people don't even know that such books actually exist today. And that is a crime. That is a sin, in my opinion, because, we need to have data, real, valuable, provable data. So let me see what some of the stuff that I wrote down here. It's things like, how back in 2012 we all thought that, well, not we all thought, just a lot of people thought that something was going to happen to the world. They made movies about it, right? 2012, the Mayan calendar ends. Oh my God! But what a lot of people don't happen to know is that that whole thing with the Mayan calendar was misunderstood, miscalculated by whoever the guy that did the translations and interpretations of it. And that date hasn't happened yet. It hasn't even occurred. It's supposed to be in 2046, not 2012. So there's still some time to go. And I'm not saying the world is going to end in 2046 either, okay? So don't get your hopes up. The world is cyclical in nature. We all know that. There's this whole thing with this whole talk with the breakaway civilizations, and there have been other civilizations here prior to ours of humans just like us. Maybe they were different than us. For sure they were different than us. I honestly believe that not only they were different, they were superior to us. Intellectually speaking, spiritually speaking, they have done many things that are still around today. They've built things that are still around today that to this day we don't know how it was done. Right? So, yeah, the whole Mayan calendar thing, yeah, the real date is 2046. Okay? And then, there are so many books out there, good books. I talked about Michael Cremo before. He's done a lot of good work, with the Forbidden Archaeology book, and he's got a new book now. I forgot the name of the book, but he's got a new book now that is kind of like a follow up to that other one. But just look him up, if you want to know. And then there was a book called Mystery of the Cathedrals that was written by Fulcanelli, and Fulcanelli was a very interesting individual that was around in the 1920s, I think it was. I don't know if it was the 1920s or before that. Don't quote me on that. But the history with him is that he was an alchemist, and if you go to Wikipedia and you look him up and look, take everything that's on Wikipedia with huge grains of salt, okay? Because Wikipedia shouldn't be the source of information for everything. So whatever is there, make sure you do a lot of extra research before taking that as the final word on anything whatsoever. But Fulcanelli, he wrote this book about the mystery of the cathedrals, and he basically goes into detail explaining that these cathedrals were built by alchemists when they were built. God knows when, back in the day, and it's most likely not the dates that they told us they were, probably older than we are told that they are. And he talks about how the cathedrals were never made for worshiping, originally, that they were like these buildings that were built for healing people through sound and frequencies and all these things, but I'm not going to tell you the book here. If you want to know more about it, look up the book Mystery of the Cathedrals by Fulcanelli. Get the book and go read it. It's excellent. It's very, very good stuff. And then, there's this other book by Susan Thompson called A Chronology of Geological Thinking from Antiquity to 1899, where she goes about how throughout the history of mankind, how science looked at, the data and, the chronology of things, how things happen, and how scientists throughout time, they changed the way they looked at things. It's because every once in a while, it might happen more often than that they have all these theories and stuff, and then later on, it's proven that wouldn't be possible because of new finds and things like that. And this is another problem with history and science themselves, is that you have all these data points that are used for a lot of things, and some of these data, most of these data, if not all of it, to this day, some of this data, what I was talking about, most of it is, let me go back and talk about this a little bit. There have been some data things that have been used that they thought that things worked a certain way. And then later on, decades later, whatever, it was discovered that some of these things didn't happen the way they thought it did. But the problem with that is that even though it was discovered that these things didn't happen the way they thought it did, is nobody went back and rewrote all those books about all these theories and data points that they were using, let's say back in the 1900s, and that they're still using today after the fact that things were found out that these theories and data points were wrong. Do you see the problem here? So they find out that things were not the way they thought it was, but nobody goes back and rewrite the books that were used to teach people these things when they go to college to learn about certain things in history, archaeology, science, whatever it is, you name it. So what I'm trying to say here is, even when they find out that the narrative that has been built over the last few centuries is inaccurate, to say the least, because they've discovered things that are not the way they said they were, they don't go and reissue those books and with an apology saying, oh, by the way, we were wrong about this. This is how it used to be back then, but the way it should be now is like this, because this wouldn't be possible. This doesn't work like that. You're never going to see people from academics apologizing about anything, because there's a narrative and they're never going to deviate from that narrative. And God forbid you're a free thinker these days, right? That's why that famous phrase, the truth will set you free, has never been truer these days. You gotta be smart when you start looking at things like that. You know, I wanna give a big shout out to the Archaics YouTube channel and Jason for the outstanding work that he does on his YouTube channel, because he's one of those people. He's been doing this pretty much his whole life, and he has the data to back up the things that he talks about. The man's been a bookworm his whole life. He knows what he's talking about. He's not, he's talking about all these historical things with all the documents, data, books, and chronology to back it up. So if you guys are not familiar with his channel, and look, I don't even know Jason, okay? I just know that what he does is the good stuff and it's real. And I like the stuff that he does and the work that he does. And if you resonate with the things that I talk about here, I think you would really enjoy the work that he does. So once again, Jason from Archaics, good stuff. And a lot of these things that I've been talking about, I got it from some of his videos, if not all of it, really. I'm not afraid to give credit where credit is due. So, yeah. If you like the channel, please like, share, subscribe. It helps the channel to reach more people, to grow. That's the whole point, right? And I will catch you guys next time. Hopefully the sound is going to be better from now on. I did some tweaking and I think it's gonna be better now. You guys let me know. Take care everyone, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.